I think we can all agree that Muv-Luv is one of the dumbest names for a series imaginable. I've literally met people who refuse to play these games because the title sounds so dumb, and I used to be one of those people. To this day, I'm still not even sure what Muv-Luv is supposed to mean. I think I read somewhere that it was a pun or something in Japanese, but regardless, it just goes to show that you should not judge a book by its cover, nor should you judge a visual novel by its name, because Muv-Luv is a one-of-a-kind experience. This video is mostly a review. It'll be part analysis, however the analysis won't be as in-depth as my other videos. My thoughts are honestly all over the place, so let's just get right into it. There will be spoilers. I honestly did not enjoy Extra. The first leg of this trilogy, which lasts for roughly 25 hours, it can be kinda charming, but also very bland. It is basically a run-of-the-mill slice-of-life harem rom-com. For all intents and purposes, there's zero conflict for almost the entire runtime, and the drama we do get is not very compelling. It's not that I have anything against slice of life per se, but the humor is unremarkable for the most part, very slapstick. If you've seen any rom-com anime from the 2000s, then nothing in this will surprise you at all. I get that this was released over 20 years ago, so the tropes it uses were not nearly as commonplace and overdone, but I was honestly just so bored seeing the sports festival, the cooking competition, the exams, the onsen trip. If you're someone who eats up these 2000s anime rom-com tropes, then you'll probably enjoy this, but it's just not my cup of tea. Also, the fact that I knew something interesting was going to happen later on in the story made me feel the urge to rush so I could get to the good stuff. Additionally, I found the cast of this game very lacking at first. Characters like Kei, Yoroi, and Tamase did not feel very interesting or likable to me. As for what I did like about Extra, I will say that the two main girls, Sumika and Maya, are quite strong and likable characters. They definitely carry the story. My favorite part of Extra is probably the banter between Takeru and Sumika. That genuinely got me to laugh a few times, and although I don't usually like the childhood friend trope, this may be the best example of a childhood friend character done properly. In most anime, manga, and visual novels, they don't really put a lot of effort into the childhood friend character, so it's very refreshing to see a childhood friend done well. As for what else I like, this goes not just for Extra, but for every leg of a trilogy. The production values are absurdly high. And what I mean is that I don't think I've ever read a visual novel, even a modern one, that comes close to Muv-Luv in terms of sheer attention to detail and small features and mechanics that utilize the VN medium. The characters blink and their mouths move when they speak. The sound of footsteps is frequently incorporated. They'll show characters from a distance gradually walk towards you. If Takeru starts crying, the screen gets blurry. If Takeru bows, they pan the camera down slightly. And they even include the sound of pushing in a chair when a character gets up from a table. These little things really add up. More visual novels should take example from this. It shows that the devs really care about the production and cinematography and utilizing the medium to its full extent. I really think every other visual novel should borrow from this, because this aspect of Muv-Luv is truly a 10 out of 10. On the whole, Extra has its charms. It has some good jokes and charming characters, but I just found it to be a snooze fest. Fortunately, the other two legs of the trilogy do make up for it. I really wasn't ready for the level of writing and story quality because I had such a negative impression from Extra. But without further ado, let's get into talking about Unlimited. Immediately, this is a huge step up because the real stakes are finally presented. It goes from 0 to 60 in a matter of minutes. I immediately understood what the creators were going for with this drastic change of tone, because as much as I think Extra may be a slog, they could not just start the story with Unlimited, because that would lead to a hampered emotional impact and undermine the game's themes. The chaotic turmoil of Unlimited is made all the more poignant by the contrasting, lackadaisical nature of Extra. You truly feel as if you, the protagonist, are not ready for this. They do a really good job of establishing the main character as a fish out of water. He goes from a lazy high school video game addict to needing to be trained as a soldier in the most important war in the history of humanity. And it's totally understandable that he sucks at everything and is seen as a liability. The change in the behavior of the cast is very pronounced and enjoyable to see. Marimo goes from a sweet, unassuming teacher to a hard-ass drill sergeant. Maya goes from an earnest, naive girl in Extra to a strong, determined rock for her squad mates to lean on in Unlimited. I will say that while Unlimited was a major step up, I wouldn't call it perfect. If Extra is a 4 out of 10 for me, I'd put Unlimited at about a 7 out of 10. The reason I can't give it a higher score is that at the end of the day, Unlimited is 100% just a setup for Alternative. Although there is some drama, there aren't that many memorable moments or insane plot twists as in Alternative. You still don't get to see combat against the beta, and the ending does come out of nowhere and feel kind of unsatisfying. Ultimately, while I wouldn't call it peak, Unlimited does its job well. It transitions you away from Extra and sets the stage for the true reason that everyone plays Muv-Luv, Alternative. To be honest, I still was not loving the first 5 to 10 hours of Alternative. If you'll recall, during this segment, you're merely redoing the time loop, repeating the soldier's exam, and so on. While technically necessary for story progression, it isn't the most interesting, and at this point I was starting to doubt whether this would truly be Kino. But fortunately, when the coup arc started, it completely knocked my socks off. It was hard to believe that I was even playing the same game as the one from 50 hours ago, where it was merely boring slice-of-life shenanigans. Alternative does a brilliant job of subverting your expectations at multiple points. I don't think most readers, myself included, could possibly have predicted this turn of events. The entire story up to this point, you're preparing yourself to fight the beta, so for the first taste of combat to be against other humans, it feels very jarring and tragic. Before this point in the story, I didn't think Takeru was a very good protagonist, but it was at this arc where I started to feel that he is indeed a very suitable main character for this story. Up to this point, Takeru spends a lot of time saying that humanity needs to put aside its differences and work together to fight the beta. Now, it's not that he's stupid, it's more that he's just very naive. Maya and Tsukuyomi explain their position of nationalism to him, and it kind of just goes over his head at first. It's understandable that he doesn't feel loyalty to his country in the way that his other squad mates do, but during this arc, Takeru is utterly distraught at the prospect of humans fighting each other and dying in what he views as a pointless conflict. Over time, he comes to understand more of the nuance of politics and humanity. He realizes the world is not as simple as he imagined it to be. This is just a really great arc for so many reasons. It has great plot twists, such as when you randomly stumble upon the Shogun, and the scene where the negotiations fall apart, and great tension building, such as when Yuhi is getting sick, riding in Takeru's TSF, and he's unsure whether to hasten her escape or slow down to help her recuperate. And the negotiation scene as a whole has very good tension. Furthermore, the dialogue really starts to shine in this arc. Every character does such a good job explaining their position and worldview. Personally, it kind of reminded me of Fate Zero, though I know this is much older. Tsukuyomi was a character that I viewed as kind of a whatever side character up until this point, but in this arc she was so damn good. The Major was a great character, Captain Sagiri was a great character. This is some real top-notch writing. It's uncommon to see such a competently written political action drama in any sort of visual novel or anime. I knew that at this point, if the quality kept up, this would definitely become an all-time favorite of mine, and also this arc cemented Maya as best girl. Jumping to the next part of the story, one point I really want to drive home is that part of what makes this game's story so great is that it does a great job of foiling the protagonist. I just explained how his worldview was changed in the last arc, but it's in this arc that it's a lot more than his worldview that get destroyed. So Takeru gets his first taste of combat against the beta, completely unexpected, during a training exercise, and he loses his shit. Totally fails to perform, almost gets himself killed, pisses himself in fear. This scene is instrumental because it thwarts his previously held delusional view of himself as some kind of action hero, savior of humanity. He learns the reality of being a soldier, that combat is brutal and terrifying, and the Marimo death scene is, in my opinion, one of the most memorable deaths I've read in all of fiction. It is completely unexpected, shocking, visceral, horrifying imagery, not to mention she dies twice. But anyway, when Takeru comes to, he is so traumatized that he does what I think many of us would do and nopes the hell out of there, tries to run away back to his home world, just for the tragedy to follow him. And he learns that he cannot escape without destroying his entire world and everyone he cares about. It is at this point he learns about his position as a causality conductor, the phenomenon causing him to time loop and everything, so it's at this point we learn the true mystery of this story. It was also very enjoyable seeing the introduction of the new squad mates. I wasn't sure that I would like these characters given how late they're introduced, but I ended up loving them. If anything, I got more attached to some of these girls than some of the OGs. The addition of these new characters was definitely a boon. It's refreshing and interesting to be introduced to actual combat veterans and to get the chance to see their psychology. Also, the character development in general is just very satisfying to witness. Not only does Takeru become more of a man and his squad mates become better soldiers, but seeing Kasumi and Sumika gradually become more human is quite enjoyable. Anyway, I think it's time to talk about that scene with Sumika, and oh lord, I was unprepared for this. I remember vaguely hearing that this game had NTR, but I just didn't believe it, because the visual novel community will accuse anything and everything of being NTR. Frankly, this just made me sad. The reason this is probably the saddest, most poignant NTR that someone will ever encounter is because this isn't like a doujin that's 20 pages long, where you can just forget about it and move on, where you're not attached to the characters. At this point, you've been with this character for almost 100 hours, and to top it off, she's oh so sweet and deserves none of what happened to her. It's truly heartbreaking. I've read some really uncomfortable and graphic H scenes and stuff like Muramasa and Tsubahime, but I've personally never read anything that has the gall to have a girl who is explicitly the main love interest be, stolen away so brutally, especially considering this started out as a totally innocent, wholesome rom-com. I did not enjoy reading this scene. I think most people didn't. And to be honest, I could have done without it, but I do understand why it was put in, to establish a sort of wedge, a barrier for the two to get over and establish the depths of their love for each other. Their relationship may not have felt earned if they immediately got together, but again, this was maybe a bit too excessive for me. While I'm talking about stuff that I'm not huge on, let me go off on another unrelated tangent. There are two things this visual novel possesses a metric ton of, and those two things being info dumps and characters making plans. If you happen to love info dumps, where characters explain a situation or go over a piece of world building in painstaking detail, this is the VN for you. Similarly, if you like reading about extremely detailed plans where they bring out maps and talk about objectives and contingencies, yeah, you're gonna eat this up. Now, I don't mind these things. I think anyone who reads Muv-Luv has a pretty good attention span, but for me, this was just a bit fatiguing at times. I would prefer if there were just a few instances of detailed planning, but it happens at least once in every single arc, and I don't think all of these instances are totally necessary. For example, in one of the chapters, you spend about an hour talking about planning and tactics for a mock training battle against your own squad mates, which in itself isn't terribly interesting because it's just a mock battle with your squad mates. It's not super high stakes. But then the mock battle itself happens entirely off screen. Now, I get that due to the medium, it's really hard to be show don't tell, but I just think that this VN can be very heavy-handed with the exposition, and sometimes less is more. One thing I did think this VN did a really good job of was the action and combat scenes. Everything from the Sadogashima Hive to the defense of the Yokohama base to the original Hive infiltration was very fun to read. It felt tense, the deaths felt sad and earned, the sense of urgency and danger is conveyed very well. At first, I was kind of wishing there were more action scenes due to how good they were, but looking back, I'm kind of glad they're a little more sparse, because that makes them all the more impactful. Anyway, as for the ending, I don't have a ton of comments on it. It was really good. I liked that every character got a good send-off, and I enjoyed the most the part where you communicate with the superordinate. I think the ending answered pretty much all the important questions I had and wrapped things up very nicely. Closing thoughts, I'm really glad I read this trilogy. Extra may not be my cup of tea, but Alternative was highly enjoyable and definitely one of my top 5 favorite visual novels. Ultimately, I think this is an experience that's difficult to replicate. I'm not aware of any piece of media that does what Muv-Luv does. It's an incredibly unique experience to read a very low-stakes, slice-of-life rom-com that undergoes such a massive shift in tone and plot, and I think it's safe to say that we won't be getting any more visual novels like this. They just don't make them like they used to. Oh well. Thanks for watching, that's all for this video, and by the way, for those of you wondering why I've been inactive, the short answer is that I have a job and a girlfriend, 2 things I did not have when I started this channel. I'm not totally walking away, I do want to make more content, but this trilogy is actually the only visual novels I've read this year. When I have had free time this year, I've been playing games like Yakuza, Persona 3 Reload, Octopath Traveler 2, you know. I also just don't really feel like making anime content anymore, so going forward, this channel will mainly be just visual novels and maybe other games, and those take me an awful long time to consume. And I only want to make videos on media that truly resonates with me on a personal level, so hope you all understand, and again, thanks for watching.